Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to the podcast, The History of. I'm your host, Rhea St. John, and on today's show, we're going to talk about the history of coffee. Ooh, my favorite subject. I don't know about y'all, but coffee is like the biggest part of my morning, and I also like to drink it black. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Black? Really? Why? Well, there's a lot of good benefits to drinking black coffee. It can boost your metabolism, reduce the risk of heart disease, reduce the risk of Parkinson's disease, and it can lower the risk of type 2 diabetes. But again, you have to drink it black. No fluff, no foam, no drizzle. I'm talking to you, Madre. Drink it black. Black coffee contains antioxidants that may fight inflammation. It can improve your mood, reduce the risk of depression. It can also be a good source of vitamins B2, B3, and magnesium. Not only that, but some studies suggest that black coffee can reduce the risk of certain types of cancers, including your liver, colon, and breast cancer. But the history of coffee is a bit of a delicious mystery. We don't have official documentation to confirm exactly who discovered coffee trees for the very first time or who invented coffee as the beverage we know today. However, we do have colorful legends we can use to piece together a rich tapestry of coffee history and then follow coffee's journey across the globe. According to legend, a goat herder named Kaldi was the first person who discovered coffee beans and their benefits. Kaldi noticed that after his goats ate the cherries of the particular tree in the ancient coffee forests of the Ethiopian plateau, they were so full of energy that they didn't want to sleep at night. Kaldi reported his findings to the abbot of the local monastery, who also struggled to stay awake during the long hours of evening prayer. The abbot made the drink with the cherries and found that it kept him alert. So, in other words, according to the story, the person who invented coffee did so for the most relatable reason possible. After the abbot shared his discovery with other monks at the monastery, after all, sharing is caring, right? Knowledge of the energizing berries began to spread. The business edition of coffee history began on the Arabian Peninsula, where people cultivated and traded coffee for the very first time. By the 15th century, coffee was being grown in what is now Yemen, and by the 16th century, it gained popularity in what we now know as Iran, Egypt, Syria, and Turkey. Wisdom in a cup. At this time, you could drink coffee at home, but you might also go to one of the many public coffee houses that they had started popping up across cities in the region we now refer to as the Middle East. At these thriving social hubs, you not only could sip your coffee, but you could chat, listen to music, watch performances, play chess, and stay current on the news. In fact, coffee houses were so vital to the exchange of information that at that time, they were also known as the schools of the wise. Sound familiar? Probably. The Arabian Peninsula attracted thousands of travelers each year, including those making the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. As these pilgrims traveled home, they spread the knowledge of these coffee houses and the wine of Araby served there. By the 17th century, coffee had made its way to Europe, and it really was becoming popular across the region. But not everyone embraced coffee right away. Some people reacted with suspicion and fear, even going so far as to call it the bitter invention of Satan. When coffee came to Venice in 1615, local clergy condemned it, sparking a controversy so great that Pope Clement VIII was asked to intervene. But after tasting the coffee for himself, He found it so satisfying that he gave it a papal approval, which is also known as the formal process of validating religious works of the Roman Catholic Church. Penny universities. Despite such controversies, European coffee houses rapidly sprang up in the major cities of England, Austria, France, Germany, and Holland, acting as major social hubs and mirroring the coffee houses in the Middle East. Much like the schools of the wise, at England's penny universities, you could purchase both a cup of coffee and stimulating conversation for a penny, of course. Coffee at work. Until this time, the most common breakfast beverages were beer and wine, neither known for sharpening focus or productivity. But as coffee became more widely available, people began drinking it to start their day instead, feeling more alert and energized and improving the quality of their work. Coffee has been working hard for working people for centuries. In the mid-17th century, there were over 300 coffee houses in London, and many of them became specialized as they attracted like-minded customers. Some of these coffee houses catered to merchants, for example, while others drew in artists or brokers. Businesses even emerged from these specialized coffee houses. One in particular was called Lloyd's of London. The global insurance marketplace began at the Edward Lloyd's Coffee House. But as demand for coffee continued to spread, there was fierce competition to produce coffee beyond Arabia. The Dutch finally got coffee tree seedlings in the later half of the 17th century. Their first attempts to grow them in India failed, but they were successful in their efforts in what is now Indonesia on the island of Java. The trees thrived, and soon the Dutch had a productive and growing trade in coffee. They then expanded the cultivation of coffee trees to the islands of Sumatra and Sulawesi. The Dutch also created the world's first coffee blend in Indonesia, combining that Arabian coffee, which was also called mocha, after the famous Yemeni port city, with coffee grown in Java. This blend has endured, and you can still enjoy a fresh cup of mocha Java today. Nearly 200 years later, French missionaries introduced the coffee tree to Vietnam. The missionaries brought Arabica trees from the island of Bourbon and planted them around Tonkin in the mid-19th century. In 1714, the mayor of Amsterdam presented a gift of a young coffee tree to King Louis XIV of France. The king ordered it to be planted in the Royal Botanical Garden in Paris, and in 1723, Gabriel de Selous, a young naval officer, obtained a seedling from the king's tree. Despite a challenging voyage featuring horrific weather, a pirate attack, and even a saboteur who tried to destroy the seedling, he somehow managed to transport it safely back to Martinique. A small seedling, enormous impact, and once planted, the seedling thrived. We have that first coffee tree to thank for the spread of coffee throughout the Americas, including more than 18 million coffee trees that grew on the island of Martinique over the next 50 years. However, that seedling also served as the parent for all the first coffee trees in the Caribbean, as well as South and Central America. So, I don't have a coffee mug, but raise your mug to that hardy, groundbreaking coffee tree. We owe it a great deal. Born from a bouquet, coffee arrived in Brazil thanks to the efforts and charms of Francisco de Melo Palheta, a Portuguese military officer sent by the emperor to French Guiana to get coffee seedlings. The French were not so willing to share, surprise, surprise. Global competition in the coffee trade was still fierce. But luckily for de Palheta, he happened to be quite handsome. He captivated the French governor's wife, who then gave him a large bouquet of flowers before he left. And inside, she buried enough coffee seeds to begin what is today a billion-dollar industry in Brazil. In the mid-1600s, coffee was brought to what is now New York City. Though coffee houses emerged and grew in popularity over the next century, tea was very much still the favored drink in the New World, until King George III imposed a heavy tax on it in 1773. As you probably already know, the tax ignited significant protest and led to the revolt known as the Boston Tea Party. As you may not know, that event didn't just change the course of American history, it forever changed Americans' beverage preference to coffee. Very, very important, guys. One of the most sought-after commodities in the world, coffee continued its march around the world as missionaries, traders, colonists, and other travelers carried coffee seeds, and a taste for the beverage. During this time, the history of coffee paints a picture that is sweeping and dramatic. People planted coffee in the soils of magnificent tropical forests and rugged mountain highlands. Some crops thrived, while others withered. Fortunes were made and lost. New nations were founded on coffee economies alone. So much rested on such a small yet powerful being. By the dawn of the 19th century, coffee was established as one of the world's most profitable export crops. It was one of the most sought-after commodities in the world, second only to crude oil. So in other words, you could find coffee at the center of global society, as you still can today. And here's the fun fact of, did you know? In 1911, one of the first trade associations in the US was formed, and they are called the National Coffee Association. Coffee, and the way we drink it, has continued to evolve. In the 20th and 21st centuries, we've seen several waves of coffee that represent both a type of coffee and an accompanying shift in coffee culture. The first wave of coffee arose as industrialization allowed for mass production. This is the coffee that first hit the shelves of grocery stores, and it provided functionality and convenience. Individuals, restaurants, and other businesses could buy this coffee, sold in bulk, and mostly pre-ground, and make it daily. There was little focus on origin, and few people in the United States even realized coffee grows on trees. Yes, guys, it does. The second wave of coffee came with the rise of the coffee chains and brands. Now in our global culture every day, with modern coffee shops, are equivalent of the coffee houses of previous centuries. A new coffee culture began to emerge, placing a greater emphasis not only on the quality of the coffee, but the experience. These social hubs allowed more people to experiment with new types of coffee, coffee drinks, and coffee flavors, and to savor them. As coffee drinkers began to develop more sophisticated palates, a third wave then emerged, and this coffee is now often referred to as specialty coffee. My favorite. This term can refer to many different types of coffee, but broadly, this wave represents a new level of quality, interest, and exploration. Coffee drinkers began looking for specific flavor profiles and single origin coffees, as well as trying different roasts and brewing methods, much like the pour-over and the French press, two of my favorite. Interest in sustainability and transparency in coffee production also grew during this wave, and new options have continued to emerge, such as ready-to-drink, RTD coffee. This pre-made refrigerated coffee is sold in a can or bottle and offers convenience for just grabbing your coffee on the go. But we're still learning and we're still experimenting. And that concludes today's history topic of coffee. I hope you found some of this interesting and informative. I would like to thank the National Coffee Association for all of this information on the topic of coffee. The article was written by the website editors, and for more information, you can visit their website at www.aboutcoffee.org. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone. And until our next journey through time, I challenge you with this. Experience a new perspective and learn something new. Bye.